Oh, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to kōrero. Super excited this evening, but before we kick things off, I noi tātou. Karikia timatanga. Hauora mai runga, hauora mai raro. Hauora mai roto, hauora mai waho. Hauora te pūtaki o tēnei kaupapa kia pūrangi aho tātou I te wānanga me te kōrero. Tēnei te titi ake e te pau hauora ki te pūtaki o tēnei wānanga. Tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna, tīna. Haumi e hui e, tae ki e. Tui a te rangi, tui te whenua, tui te pauherenga tangata o te motu kei taku kingi tū heitia. Potato te whirowhiro, te tuawhitu. Pai mārire, kia koe, otira kia tātou. E mihi ana ki a tātou kua whakakotahi mai ki te kaupapa o kōrero. Tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa, ka tuihana ohi ahau. Most of you will know me, hail from the most beautiful place in Aotearoa, although I'm sure there'll be a few people who would argue otherwise, from the beautiful Tauranga Moana, Mount Maunganui. Nai te rangi, nai te pukinga, nai te rangi nui, and te aroa. But anyhow, enough from me because I'm really excited to get into this kōrero this evening. We have with us the very gorgeous, the very lovely Tracy Lee Te Pā. Over to you, sister. Kia ora.
Oh, kia ora, sisi. Nā mihi kia koe. Te karanga mai kia au. Ko wai au, ko Tracy Lee Te Pā, tako ingoa, tūri o hau ki te taha pāpa. Nā te whakaue, no nā te whakaue, mea nā te rangi, ia ki te taha māma, tūri o hau, te raroa, nā te whātua kaipara, tūwhare toa, me Waikato hoki, ko au te mama o Manaia, ko ia, taku kaiako mea, taku ao. Taku mahi, he kaimahi, kaiako me kaiako, o romi, meri romi rongoa rākau, me te whakaora, me te whaka wātea, te whare tangata, me te taiawa, o nā Wāhine. So kia ora.
Kia ora. So, just to give you a bit of whakapapa whānau, Tracy and I only met probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, through our very beautiful mutual friend, Nina Kei Tane Tinaro. And what was so interesting about that was, you know how you just meet people, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen where you just click. And I remember Nina Kay saying, you two, don't talk about mahi, don't talk about your mahi. And it took all of us to not talk about our mahi, but there was, I believe, quite a connection between the two of us. And yeah, it was just lovely. It was just lovely. So we just need to mihi to our beautiful friend, e hoa, Nina Kei Tane Tinaro, who connected us, and I know that she's really excited about us talking this evening. So yeah, and I think I was fascinated with what Tracy does in her mahi, and you know, this kōrero is about elevating those in the community who often fly under the radar and aren't necessarily that visible, but yet are doing so much to contribute to others and in terms of their hauora, their well-being. So, and Tracy is a perfect person in terms of that kind of whakaaro. So Tracy, just can you please tell us what it is that you do? That'd be really awesome. Kia ora.
Okay, so we're going to talk about taiawa steaming?
Yes, let's go. Just go straight there. I reckon.
Yeah. So taiawa steaming is a ritual or a practice that I am wanting to really elevate our woman into. It is a practice and a ritual that our tupuna kuia did and knew about many generations back, and something that they did in the way of taking care of themselves for labour, for helping labour, for clearing venereal diseases from settlers, through healing postpartum. It was a practice that was well known and well documented using rongoa. So depending on what the ailment was within our woman, it was something that we practiced, that our tupuna practiced regularly. And so for me, when I literally went to a wānanga, which was a belly dancing and yoga and tantra women's wānanga, and there was a beautiful woman there who's based here in Tāmaki, Rosanna, and from Aroha Healing, and she was running this wānanga, and we did all these different things, and they were all really magical. And then she took us and we went around the garden and started picking different things we were attracted to. And it wasn't necessarily rongoa rākau, like our rongoa, but there were kind of other herbs in these gardens, and we collected different things that we were attracted to. And then she took us through this process that was from Mayan, is where she'd learnt it, through that whakapapa. So and I was the first one to go, like have a turn. I was a little bit excited, because this kind of stuff really excites me. Like, I'm like, oh, this is different, and this is a little bit taboo, and and this is, what is this? And I was so curious. And so she was like, you can go first. And so I went in, and she had this beautiful box that she'd had made specifically for this. And I went into the bathroom, and we'd heat it up in a big it was a pot, I guess. It was a big stainless steel pot, and and heated up and put in these different things that we collected, and then we sat over it. And so it was in the box, like we heated it up, and then it started steaming, and then we took it into the bathroom, put it in the box, and then we crouched over it and allowed everything to kind of heat up, and you had to regulate, because it might have been too, and it was a bit hot to begin with, and then it was sitting over the top of it, and just it was just this nurturing, beautiful sensation that I hadn't experienced before, that felt so beautiful and so nourishing and loving, and it was like something I'd never ever felt before. And I was really conscious, because I was the first one on. I think there might have been 8 of us, and it was late at night, and even though I wanted to stay there like forever, I was just like, no, it was, I think I probably finished a little bit too soon to allow space for the other wāhine that were there.
Yeah.
And but from there, I couldn't stop thinking about it. There was just something in me that it kind of was just like, oh my God, I need this in my life. Like, this is, and for me, it was really about, it became, when I first kind of started, it became about wanting to release old energy. So old lovers, old partners, was kind of the reason why I kind of really started. I got one of our students to create this beautiful box for me, and then I started kind of playing, and and I'd come out of a relationship, and I wanted that transition for myself to not feel bound energetically, because I kind of I feel out of different relationships and partnerships, and so I wanted to be able to release like all parts of me away. I'd done rituals, but this was something that I wanted to do as part of that, and releasing the bindings that I had there.
So is it an Indigenous practice that we, like First Nations Aotearoa, so Māori practice, but is it actually an Indigenous practice that was done amongst many?
All around the world, Indigenous women knew this practice.
Wow.
do this practice generations back, and there's just whakapapa, the more research you kind of do, they still, they used to do it. Korean women still do it and have been continuing, like they never stopped. Some of their men do it as well. So it's
Right.
kind of, and so when I started looking into it, I really, it was just like, oh my God, this is something innately in me that feels so amazing. I think that a lot of the time as Wāhine, we are prodded and poked, and we have all these things that we've got to, be tested for, and have babies, and we're always there's, and then with our lovers, and and there's just never anything that really, there might be relationships that will do that on our spaces, but overall, there's nothing. There was nothing that I'd experienced in the way of honouring my body, my taiawa, and my whare tangata that came even close to what this brought for me.
And can you explain what the steaming does? Like how do you then know? So I suppose it's innate, because what you pick and what you put into the water probably is what leads you to, pick those certain things. So, and then after it'd just be interesting to know, like,
So really what steaming does, so the actual kind of physiology of it is it steams, it warms, and it dislodges. So for us, when we have kōrero, when we're sharing bodily fluids, when we're sharing energies with other people, our whare tangata sometimes through, and a lot of the time actually, because of trauma, I guess, that has happened within the whare tangata and the taiawa, so experiences, and as a Māori healer, I'm really surprised if someone gets on my table and they haven't been through some form of sexual violation, and so when we've got trauma sitting in the body, it holds, right? It blocks different things. And so when we've had trauma around the whare tangata, that could be birth as well, is also really trauma. It gets stuck within the cellular memory. So there are blockages that kind of happen within the whare tangata. So therefore it doesn't work as, cleaning out. Like when we have our kōrero, it doesn't work the same. It doesn't flow the same, right? So then what happens is we get old blood, we, mucus that turns, then carries on to becoming cysts or fibroids, the scarring of endometriosis, all that kind of stuff stops the whare tangata from doing what it naturally should be doing. And so what this does is it actually heats and it liquidizes what's sitting in the whare tangata. So it will open the cervix, and gently, but gently. It's not kind of, everything is really gently and nurturing and warming. So it's a real kind of feminine energy that happens when you do steam. And so what it does is it dislodges everything that's sitting up within the taiawa, so within the canal, up through the taiawa and up through the whare tangata, and it starts coming away. So it liquidizes it, and then after the steam, there can be a discharge. Okay, so there can be old blood, that can be prone to different kind of, if we are prone to different infections, that kind of thing, it will all come away. So it's a ritual and a practice that keeps us well, that keeps everything flowing, and keeps the whare tangata moving constantly.
Because I was just thinking that depending on your correct me if I'm wrong, but each lover would kind of leave a bit of their mauri or a bit of their something within you, whether you've had children with them or not, but each of your lovers would, I can't think of the word, leave a deposit for want of a better word, but something of their mauri passes to you. So this is about clearing that, really clearing that away.
Absolutely right. So it's about, because the whare tangata is a vessel, right? So it holds. That's what it does. So, my whakaaro and what I've learned through, years of researching is that actually what used to happen that honoring of sexual exchange and that beauty of, we would take that male energy, because our men are beautiful, but they're not very good at moving their shit, right? They're very kind of, they will, they're not sure or not very good at that. Some are wonderful. Most haven't learned how to do that, and it's just a learning. But what used to happen is we would come together, and then we would exchange energy, right? So they would wrap us in like really kind of safe, protective energy, because that's what comes really innately to them, is they are the protector. They just hold space beautifully. That's what that's one thing that, that's innate to them. And so they would come through and really kind of, in that exchange, they would wrap us in that energy, and then we would take their energy. And the whare tangata is a place of you transmute energy here. Yes. And so we would take their stuff and we would transmute it, and we would give it back in a different form that would fill them up. And so they would fill us up with safe, protective energy. We would take their stuff and we would exchange it back. So it was a beautiful energy. So there was this beautiful mutual exchange. So neither of us were caught in deficiency. And I think a lot of the time now we've lost that practice. How do we actually, really exchange in a really beautiful, honoring way of each other? And so what happens now is that when we exchange, energy with our lovers, with our partners, it gets stuck. We don't move it. So therefore it gets stuck here, And so a lot of the time when I have wāhine come through who are like suffering from anxiety, I'm like, we need to steam, because it may not be your anxiety. And that's one thing that I learned along my own journey of doing this, is that actually the anxiety that I was carrying wasn't mine, and it had been exchanged with my partners. We're exchanged, but it was in my body and I could feel it within me, so it felt like mine. So of course I'm going to own that. God, I've got anxiety. But if you don't have whakapapa to where that anxiety came from, it's not your, like you trace it back. Like if you felt anxious for all these years, what was actually going, everything has whakapapa. And so it's tracing it back to where that actually came from. And it might have come from a lover. But what I've found when I've sat down with women and gone through what's going on for them, what's happening, the power of steaming has been incredible, of actually moving that stuff really gently and beautifully out, and being able to really sever those ties.
And is karakia part of it? Is karakia part of the entire process? And is there other things that go hand in hand with it when you?
Yeah, well, it's like what I like to do is go through a meditation with women. So we start breath. It's the breath. The breath is the most, for me, and all my work that I do, when I enter people's bodies, when I work with people doing romi, I enter through many. I enter energetically, and I use the breath. And the breath is a big kind of part. So what I do with women is we will go through, and men, because I've done it with men as well, I like to go through a guided meditation with them after we've had a bit of a kōrero to see what's being held, and then getting them to kind of breathe and really activate everything within their tinana. I mean, taku karakia is all part of the miri, it's all part of that kind of energetic exchange anyway, and is there. But for me, it's just guiding them through back into their body, like really getting them to breathe, because we become real disconnected and disassociated, right? When we've been so this is our access way back in through the whare tangata to kind of connect back into ourselves. And we create everything from here. This is not just where we create our babies. This is where we create everything. And when we start cleaning house, like literally cleaning out old energies, emotions that have been sitting there, grief, if we've lost babies, whether that's miscarriage, termination, stillbirth, it's clearing everything out, so we reconnect in with ourselves. And there's just a knowing that women have once they've gone through this process. Like it's really it's incredible, the changes that I've seen when I've worked with women and men, just the changes that happen immediately, but yeah, so it's just kind of, enabling us to go back to these practices using, yeah.
And as part of this practice, do they come and see you once and then they're done, or is it a number of times that, or is it that really dependent on the journey they need to take? Because I'm gathering that everyone's really quite different.
Yeah. Everyone
Yeah,
is. It depends on what they kind of what they're coming for.
yeah,
I I believe that, and what I've learned is that there are safe ways of practicing this too that are really important, and education around that. There are some women that should not be steaming. There
okay,
are some women, and there are different kind of time frames that you should steam within,
yeah.
depending on kind of what's going on for you. So I would encourage that women have a consultation first. I want women steaming from their home. I don't want them coming to me like I really
Ah,
don't want women like I want women to be empowered by the mātauranga that I'm sharing. I don't want, where you can do this from your home. I want our young girls seeing their mamas do this when we start going through menopause, that I want, our queers to be doing this, that there's actually a this practice happening in every home. That's what I want. And I think, and I believe we can do this. But I think there are just kind of guidelines that I want to share in different ways of how we do that safely, and who it's great to steam, but it's looking at people's cycles as well. So at their e-kura cycles and bringing that back into normality in different ways.
does the maramataka play a certain part in when you steam and when you don't, or does the maramataka play a part?
It can, I think one of the things that I've learned, and I'm all about kind of ancient knowledge, that's
Yeah, yeah.
that tutu stuff. And what I've learned along my own journey is that we have different, even though, yes, we've got the, rako nui and whiro
Mm,
and all these kind of different times of things, we're also different. And that actually for you to connect back to your own maramataka, it's looking at when you were born and where the phase of the moon was when you were born. So, so for me, rako nui whiro, I'm fine. I'm sweet. Like I'm mean. Like I
yeah,
don't have any issue over those times. But you take me into kind of 4 days after kind of the full moon. That's when the cracks start to kind of show themselves.
wow.
That's when I was born. So it's kind of, it's looking at those. So I like to look at those things too when I work with people. It's looking at what your actual connection is to henna, rather than
Yes,
just not all the same. We're all really different, and
yes,
so if we can do it that way as well, I think, like honoring that these are the energies that are around at this time.
mm,
Mean
mm,
actually you within your own cycle, especially when women go through menopause and they no longer have their cycle. It's like, how do we actually really look at their own cycles? Because we no longer have an ikura. So it's like, so what do we do then? We don't have of
yeah,
course we have cycles. So then for me, we go back to when they were born, the moon phase that was kind of happening when they were born, that would be their whiro, that would be their new moon. That would be kind of when we would start building energy from there. So that's how I would look at it, and that's how I would take it off. So yeah, absolutely.
it's
And even with fertility, yeah, it's looking at those types of things
ah,
um, that are really helpful in the way of your own cycles. And then, I really encourage women to look at their own cycles and write down like what's going on around. Like if you're really aware of what the moon phase was when you were born, then start kind of documenting like, how am I in those, like, am I mean? Have I got heaps of energy? Am I
yes,
on? And then the opposite of that. So, 2 weeks after that, how are you then? Like, and really kind of working with the cycles for your own personal connection though. I think that's kind of really important.
I'm smiling because it's interesting that we're talking about this because Meritani, who we had on in March, and she spoke to us around the maramataka, and
Yes.
I was fascinated with how each person's maramataka varies from individual to individual. you know, like, yeah, and the different moon phases don't necessarily mean, although they're a guide for how people may be, they're not actually necessarily mean that that's how you will be. But just, I just want to, you did a nice little segue into menopause. So, prior to coming on, Whānau, we were talking about menopause. So, hand up in the air. I feel nervous almost telling people that I'm going through it, because I said to Tracy, I don't want to be, have the stigma of being old, because I don't want to be old. Not that there's anything wrong with being old, but it's just almost, it's a stigma that can stick. And so I personally haven't had my e-kura since December. Bit of spotting in March, but it's been, it's been, yeah, and then there's hot flushes, but I know there's a lot of wāhine at the moment that are going through either
Yeah.
pre-menopause or within menopause, or are coming out the other end. So, yeah, what do you do in those circumstances? Because it's interesting, because you kind of always want it to go away. Then when it actually does go away, your e-kura I'm talking about, you're kind of like, because there's lots of realizations about your life, you know, no more children. You're definitely moving into a new phase of your life. There's all these kind of things that you're confronted with. So, how does this actually, uh, work with those of us that might either be in it or at the other end? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, like steaming is incredible for that. I think that it's really taking back the mana of that phase, and I don't think that we have as women. We're slowly bringing back a lot of our old practices, and but there's a real honoring around. There's womb wisdom. That's kind of where that's the next part of our journey. Is actually, and even if we look at the whakapapa of our culture, and and look at kind of colonization, and actually what saved our culture, my belief, and kind of some of the research that I've done, is that women kind of in that stage are invisible within colonization, right? Like within like Western frameworks, those women are invisible, and that's that whole crazy colonized belief that is one thing that we've kind of I guess taken on, but actually for our culture, those are the women that kept our culture alive, because they went after our men, and and changed our whakapapa through, I guess, controlling our Māori women, and the terrible trauma in which came with the land wars, and and all that kind of stuff that came with that. But it was our kuia and our that wisdom that they carried, and because they were invisible, they were actually able to keep that mātauranga, and that's what the whare tangata becomes. I mean, like, it's always that. It's always been that womb, that wisdom. It is all there, and because of that, I mean, that's the fabulous thing about it, right? And so with steaming, I mean, like, even, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, I started getting hot sweats, and I started and so then I started using different rongoa, and starting to steam.
Okay.
It calmed everything down. Like my hot, my night sweats went, and it rebalanced me chemically, which is what we want through those stages. Is finding a practice that actually that is natural, that is a beautiful alternative, and nurturing us through that stage, so it's not so traumatic and not so full on, and and this is it's just using different types of rongoa to help us through that.
Yeah, because one thing is, it's like, instead of looking at this time in life as challenging, actually look at it as a celebration. And it's like when you're a young girl and you have your e-kura for the first time. That should be a celebration, and I know that culturally within, te ao Māori, it was a celebration. And, having a baby, having a pepe is another celebration. And I think that this time it's about shifting, well, for me, here personal whakaaro is about moving away from this colonized, westernized perspective and actually saying, actually, this is a bloody good time. And this isn't about me getting on old. This is actually about me just going into another beautiful phase of life, you
Yeah,
know?
100%. And it's a little bit different, but it's still so empowering. And it's kind of, we've got to really honor that. And I've
Yeah.
had a few of my mates who, who are going through that. They're like, man, can I come and steam? Like, let's make a thing of it. Like, and I'm like, absolutely. Like, just come. Maybe we do a few women, a few of your mates, we all come in and we steam together, and we just celebrate this time, this new transition. Because what the whare tangata does is then we can really use it in different ways of transmuting energy in a way that we've never been able to do before, And so it's like, man, it's just remembering these different things, and it's just really activating them in our body, because our bodies know, right? Like they totally know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's just re-stimulating that mātauranga that's already in there. And that's how amazing our kuia were, is that they knew that. So therefore a
And
lot of that mātauranga is actually, so we can access it, is sitting in the whare tangata. And it's like, man.
because I also think with the Western perspective, there's come a shame. Like, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna I just realized what I said about my own menopause, and people are going to be like, "Oh my gosh, overshare." But I'm at the same time, I'm like, if we're not talking about it, if we're not, if we can't have pono kōrero about
Absolutely.
it, then actually we're still confirming.
Yeah.
Again, these are very personal views. We're conforming to a Western way of thinking.
Absolutely.
So,
And
and it's
and I-
interesting because I was with some wahine at Wāhi Pā, we did, doing some mahi, and three of them said, "Bloody hell, Tihana, what's this bloody hot bloody flushes thing?" And thinking about some of the beautiful things that I've learnt from Nina Kay and Che Wilson and others was just if you feel it coming, just try and slow down your breathing and focus, and move away from the flustering feeling and move into the feeling of just bringing some peace. And by the way, there's a vitamin that I think you should take too. But like all these things can help, but it's about actually unlearning the learning and relearning.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Because, that's what we do. We've just taken on these belief systems that aren't ours, and they
yeah,
don't suit us, Like it kind of,
yeah,
it's like, man, let's like just peel all that shit away. And,
yeah,
through this kind of kōrero, right? Through us talking about these different things, we can share different, whatever that looks like, but we can share little magic and little creative things that work for us,
yes,
and something that
yeah.
works may not necessarily work for somebody else, but he pai ana,
I
people, they'll be like, oh man, that's totally, I want to try that. That would be awesome. But it's just kind of being able to open up these conversations so we can start exploring different ways of being. Because to be honest, what is currently available isn't working, isn't
yeah,
good,
yeah.
doesn't lift, or, it's not uplifting us. It's again, a place
It's
of,
not Well, it's
and
not nurturing us, is it? It's reminding us, though. It's reminding us that we are moving in Western paradigms, right? It's reminding us that you're just a woman, when actually we are so much more.
God,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we are the universe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, this is the universe. Oh my God. In all its different phases. And we're the universe. And it's kind of like we need to start honoring that. But we've got to start believing that for ourselves. And it's about
Absolutely.
having these conversations to change and release, all that old shit that we've believed or been told, or like, actually, nah, that's
Yeah.
not a narrative anymore. We are
Absolutely.
when we start, and honestly, when I've worked with women and we start clearing out a lot of the old, things that are being said, like the old belief
Yeah.
system, the old emotions attached to that, the shame. When we start
Yeah.
moving that out, oh my God, women, like seeing them really come into themselves, they remember how powerful they are, and that anything is possible, um, and that whatever they want to create, they totally can. I mean, it kind of blows my mind that we haven't kind of been exposed, and I get why we haven't been exposed to this, why this had to go, why this practice had to be thrown out, because when women start doing this, it's the change, when you start healing, like you start healing women, you start healing whānau, you start healing communities, like there's this massive ripple effect that happens because of who we are and where we stand in the world, and so kind of bringing back these types of rituals and practices and empowering women to do it for themselves, like, through guidance, and then letting them explore, letting them go and find, is so powerful. And it's kind of like, we need to be doing this, like, and so rolling out different ways to reach women so we can have these conversations, running wānanga, teaching women how to do it, teaching online, all that kind of thing, so women can do it from their own home. And
the other thing is, like, we have rangatahi who often, because of Western paradigms, are really traumatized when suddenly their ikura comes. They're like, what? Whereas, as I've said, traditionally we actually celebrated that time because it's about coming into your womanhood. It's about, another stage of life. I just find this incredibly, incredibly exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
Even research that Ngā Huia, Murphy did, has opened these conversations up in a lot of different ways around the ikura, but there's still and that's beautiful and so powerful, and it's made a huge difference to our rangatahi and to our women, everywhere. It's been really beautiful and uplifting, the mana of Wāhine, But I also think that we need to really kind of celebrate the whare tangata and really kind of get some kōrero going around that too, because that's everything. That's even postpartum after birth, there's a lot of shame around that, and it's kind of like all these different things that have kept us, well, I don't know, playing. I call it playing small, but kept us bound to not being as like our two points out paths for all of us that are incredible, and we come from whakapapa that's incredible. So how can we not be incredible? It's just like, oh my God, it just makes so much sense. So if we can find and uplift, our women, our girls, and show them different ways of being, then man, our future looks really, really amazing.
Oh God, I just feel so empowered by this kōrero and so inspired, by your kōrero, because I feel like it's a time too, where we're really coming into our own, not just as Wāhine, but as Indigenous people as well. But I feel like we're really, really coming into our own. Like we're finally, there's a lot of reclaiming of so much. I had a gentleman, and he's actually quite a nice gentleman, but he said to me, what's with those dribble chins? And I was like, sorry, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? Oh, these things on their bloody chins. And I was so shocked and so taken aback. And I thought to myself, just the lack of understanding and the lack of, so I said, yes, I was incredibly offended for so many wahine, but at the same time, it's an opportunity to re-educate. It's an opportunity. And I think that, there's a lot of re-education of or reclaiming of past practices back into our lives. And I was just thinking, many of us after giving birth, some of us have had postnatal, some of us have just had blues. There's been varying degrees of how people respond after they've given birth. I would say that steaming can help, could be a part of a series of things that could help to heal this kind of
Yeah,
space.
fourth trimester postpartum is something that I'm working with a midwife actually currently around how we really integrate that within the care, because with steaming, what it does is there's studies that have been done that show the shrinking of the uterus is hard. Like they did 2 test groups, and everything like it took half the time for everything to come back. The swelling of the labia, that there wasn't incontinence or hemorrhoids, or prolapsing for the woman that steamed. Their weight came back like to the same prior to when they were hapu. There were just so many benefits. The milk came through. They didn't have the blues. There were kind of all these things. And some of us, I was maybe in the 70s, they used to steam in the hospitals. So they actually used to practice with some women while they were in hospital, right, to help with the healing, because then it heals stitches, sutures internally as well. Because when you steam, it goes through the different layers and the tissues of the skin, right? So this was just using just purely steam. So it is a way to clean house and a really like you're just going through the layers, it's cleaning everything out, and it's rebalancing the hormones. So you've got all these beautiful benefits that come with that, and that's why our queer tupuna, they did, they did this. It's kind of like, they were doing this practice the whole time. They knew about it. All women around the world, and most were doing that for postpartum. So it just, everything heals. It tones the taiawa, so there's no prolapsing of the organs out. It's kind of like there are just, and there's a real kind of peace and calmness that comes. So when, as a new mama, things are kind of a bit crazy. Like, if you've got other babies, it's kind of like, man, there's all sorts of things, coming at you, and just being able to take, and literally it's like 10 minutes where you just go steam, when baby's down, being able to steam, afterward, just allow you to come back into your body, right? Because it's also reconnecting you back in after birth, because birth can be, depending on, like, even physically it's traumatic, but actually emotionally, depending on what.
Yes.
Also, what other trauma, I think one of the other things we have been looking at too is when we've been through sexual violation, it's really difficult in those spaces, and we're not healing, because when we're hapu, it's a really good time to start healing a lot of the things that have happened. And our babies, our rangatira that we're carrying, will show us where those take are, depending on where they're sitting in the body. If there are kind of different ways that the body is showing things are out of balance, they're not quite right, it's a wānanga that baby shows you. So it's kind of like, if we can start clearing those. So when, because birth is about surrendering, right? It's about really kind of releasing in and allowing yourself to go where you need to go, and when we've been through sexual trauma or violence, and we're wider, like we're literally so vulnerable in this space, and if we haven't healed, that sexual trauma, it's going to come up, like it's so going to come up in that birthing space. And so, my colleague, we're looking at different wānanga to try and help women clear that stuff and really tune into themselves. It's about reconnecting back to your tinana, because your tinana accumulates trauma, stress, pain. So it's knowing what the tohus are of the tinana. What is the tinana telling you? What is it regarding? What's the whakapapa? What's it showing you? What are the tohus that they're showing you to where you're imbalanced, or you're holding, or you're, there's stuff. Is it the male whakapapa? Is it the female whakapapa? Is there stuff, like the body, the tinana will show you. And your rangatira that you're carrying will also show you, because they want you to clear the shit before they come through, right? Because they don't want to have to carry it and continue it. So it's kind of, that's a prime time to be clearing those things, during haputanga, or, even before you get hapu would be even better. But, the wānanga is the wānanga. And so being able to kind of help navigate wāhine through that so that they are birthing in a really powerful way and taking, that it's their space. This is your birthing space. This is a really powerful space that is yours. So being able to really allow women to own that space and hold that space and their babies and birth with their babies. I think one thing also is that we think that we birth separately to our babies, but actually, some of the mahi, of haputanga of kōmirimiri is about connecting mama to baby and letting baby actually show you the wānanga through birth, and letting your baby is a rangatira. Your baby isn't this pepe that's you just need to allow baby to lead you through that birth process.
I find this fascinating because with my youngest, who's 17, when I was happy with him, there was a lot of trauma that went on there was a lot of trauma, and yet he was the easiest to carry. He was really easy to carry. And then when he was born, he was really easy, in terms of feeding. He was just this real cruisy, kind of laid back kid, baby, and he was just gorgeous. And but it was interesting because now I realize he was really looking after me
100%.
while I was going through a lot of what I went through. And and I think there's attachment to all my 3 boys. I can tell a story about all 3. But there's something about the younger one that I felt I was really being looked after at a time in my life which was really tumultuous, incredibly challenging. And, we lost 3 people in our whānau in the space of 4 months. It was just really, it was a really tumultuous time. So when I think about that, as I'm listening to you talking, I'm like, oh yeah, little light bulb moments going on. I just wanted to know if there was any questions from anyone who's listening, because Tracy and I could keep on talking. And how do people, when someone comes to see you, first of all, it'd be really good for those that are listening to know how to contact you if they were interested, but also what's the process in terms of, what's the tikanga once they reach out to you, what kind of then goes from there? I know you've briefly mentioned it previously, but it'd be really good to understand what that looks like,
Yeah, so I've only just started mahiing and it will change, but at this stage, you can either contact me through Instagram or through my business. But initially, what women do is they will contact me. They can book online, and then on that booking form, there's questionnaires. So the questionnaires that will ask them lots of different questions about their cycle, about kind of any if they're hapu is a major thing, because if you're hapu, you should not steam. So because it actually opens the cervix, right? So
yes.
So kind of steaming at about 36 weeks is preparing to give birth is okay, but actually from wanting to conceive or thinking that you're probably hapu is probably not, I won't steam with women. And then they will come and they'll also ask them for their date of birth and their time, because I want to have a look at their charts too, to see. I like to match, especially if you're coming to see me personally, I like to match different rongoa that you need according to your chart. So within your birth chart, so astrology. So I use kind of medical astrology too to work out where there's weakness in the body, where there is kind of predisposition of health, issues that come up.
Yes.
And, and I'll ask them if there are different issues, and then I can see that in their chart. And then what I do is I use different rongoa that is specific to their chart that they will need. So they'll come, we'll sit, we'll have a kōrero, depending on if they are coming for miri, oromi, or steaming, or both. We go through a bit of a kōrero. So there'll be kind of things that I'll want to ask, and just, I guess, just to kind of connect, because it's, connecting that miri is really important to sit down with people, and then just let them share whatever they want to share. That's how I roll. And then if I'm doing miri romi, I like to tune into the tinana and see what I can pick up from the tohus that kind of come through when I'm working with somebody.
Wow.
I'll talk about that and say, you're holding on to this, whether it's whakapapa, whether it's a baby, whether it, I don't know, whatever kind of I can pick up through the body, then I'll talk to that, because that, and it might be something completely different to what we've spoken about in the beginning. I'll go, okay, so this and there's that, and this is what I'm picking up, and this is kind of, and I'll talk to that with the person, and then with the romi we'll start through the body. So then I'll start activating different points throughout the body. And then it's up to them. I'm kind of like, I'm not here to heal you. You're your own healer. It's up to you to release. So, yeah.
Sorry, have you got like in your whakapapa, in your whānau whakapapa, did you have wahine kuia who were healers before you? Like, is this a kind of a taonga that you've been gifted and you're carrying on?
One of my kōrero was a midwife, and so he birthed all our babies down in Taumaranui. So he birthed all the babies, and so that's kind of, and when I work with hapu woman and I tune into baby, so I kind of, and I can say this baby is really like toe. Like I had one. A client of mine that I had for a couple of years, and she came and baby was about 20 weeks, and I said, this baby is a Taurus baby, like really strong and powerful, and like I can feel this baby, and this is kind of, she's like, oh no, baby's is going to be Aries. I'm like, okay, you're sweet. And so we're getting close to the time, and I'm going, whoa, this baby's a Taurus. Like I just, it must be this baby that's Taurus moon, so maybe this baby's going to come through for it. Like this baby's Taurus, right? And she's like, no, and she's kind of thinking she's going to, and she's beautiful. And then anyway, so we have this beautiful baba, and I saw this baba a couple of days ago, which was just magical, because I love working on women. And sure enough, because I went and I checked her birth chart, and then she's got like 5 different placements that are Taurus, and she was born in Taurus, like Taurus sun. I was just like, she's like, I walked away from her. I saw her in Baba the other day, and she's like, you got it right, hey girl, like this baby is so Taurus. I'm like, bro, this baby's Taurus hard. So it's kind of, that's one thing that I like to do with hapu mamas, is really tune into the energy. And I guess that's why I work with the midwife that I do, because I give her a heads up, like, this is going to be, and on how, just a heads up on what could possibly happen. So she's prepared, right? So it's kind of working with that. So yeah, I had a kōrero that birthed all our babies, and there's that. And then my kōrero was matakite. So, I'm not, they weren't healers, like I guess
Yes.
We all have tonga, right, within our DNA, but that's definitely tonga that kind of come through all of us. But yeah,
because I remember when I met you, I remember within minutes of meeting you, I was like, are you matakite? I remember, and you didn't really answer me yes or no, but I was just like, there was just a something. Now people are probably thinking, Tuihana, have you experienced the steaming yet? No, I haven't, but Tracy it's coming. Yeah, it's definitely coming. And I'm quietly, excited and nervous all at once. But so this is something I've never really shared with people before, but I've actually been pregnant 4 times and chosen to give birth 3 times. So there's one time I chose not to. And I think that, it's kind of something you bury down over there, and you think, "Oh, it was so long ago, I'll just forget about it." But I think in talking to you tonight, it's probably something that's really sat at the back of my mind, and having had and like many, having had 3 boys, I often think, "Oh, wonder what the other baby was," like, "I wonder what it would have been." So, there is a little bit of kind of, reflection there, and I don't find it once upon a time, I would have found it quite confrontational, but I think it's time to just let go of a whole lot of things, and yes, whānau, I am going through menopause, and yes, it is present, and it's right here, right now. Um, yeah, but I just feel like you're right, Tracy. We need to get a lot more women really empowered with these practices of our tupuna. Um, and, whether that is steaming or whether that's something else. So, but I think yeah, it's a wonderful opportunity to continue to elevate um, our whakapapa, and those taonga from our tūpuna. So I feel like I could keep talking to you and talking to you and talking to you. And what's really wonderful is Dorothy has put up there a link to how to make an appointment with you. So yeah. um, is there anything that you'd like to say before we kind of close off for the evening, Tracy?
Um, no, I think that I want to thank you, Ehua. I think it's like divine connection that we've come together, and that having this kōrero, it went really quickly, which is beautiful. But I just, I think for mamas out there, women out there that are struggling or that are, be kind to yourself and
Mm,
know that what you're doing is incredible, because I kind of think that we beat ourselves up sometimes way too much over shit that doesn't actually really matter. And sometimes we don't do shit so well, like we don't. There are lots of times in my, especially with my son, where I'm like, oh man, I could have done that better,
yeah, yeah.
being kind to yourself around that. I think that it is definitely the time of rising of Indigenous people, of Indigenous women, and it's really, really important that that we start really connecting in. And even if that's just putting your hands on your puku where your whare tangata is, and just
Mm,
your magical hands on this place and really kind of tuning in to the wisdom that's sitting within you, that is a beautiful place to start, and feel in and ask yourself, is there any emotion in here or anything that I need to let go of? And like intentionally closing your eyes and putting energy there, and then
mm,
actually trying to get that kind of, like imagining some warmth happening in that space and warming up the area, and and using the breath just to release out, can be as simple as that. Like it doesn't
mm.
need to be, all these different things. But I hope you're always going to steam at some stage. I'm coming for you. I'm going for all of you.
I'm actually, yeah. I mean, I joke about it. I said to Tracy before we came on, I joke about it. Oh yeah, gonna, steaming your tete, like, and it was, I was joking about it, but I know that there's a much deeper whakapapa to it. But I think it was about me trying to be honest, about me trying to make it more comfortable for my own internal dialogue, right? So yeah, but look, Ehua, I really have felt an amazing connection with you, and I'm going to try not to get emotional. I really need to mahi to our friend, Nina Kaitani Tinaro, who continues to be this beacon of light for so many wahine, right? And Tani actually across the motu. So I just want to mahi to you, to her, sorry, but I also really want to mahi to you and thank you, because I feel like we could talk for a whole nother half hour, or a whole nother hour or hours at least. But at least people know how to contact you. And remember, whānau, she is on Instagram. The link's there to book an appointment with Tracy. I'm going to be seeing her in the next, hopefully, 2 weeks, and that'll be awesome. And I really think that this as you were talking, you know, for a long time I've spoken with Nina Kay and other wāhine about it is time for us to have this this, and look, there are plenty being hosted and being run at the moment, but around this, you know, empowerment or reclaiming of wāhine, and you know, there's a wānanga that needs to happen almost in that space, you know, with all these amazing wāhine doing all this amazing mahi. So thank you on behalf, and I just want to mihi to Dot. Dot,
Yes.
you might want to come on and be present with us now. Dot is she's an amazing wāhine herself, Dot. So I just want to mihi to Dot, take the time to mihi to Dot and her whānau. They recently lost 3 of their mokopuna and 1 of their mokopuna tuarua in a tragic car accident just out of Taniatua. So I just want to mihi to you, Dot, and to your whānau, and actually to those who have lost people. There's been quite a lot of loss in the last couple of weeks or so. So we, you know, moi mai rā to whānau who, and to those that have passed, and just know that our love and our thoughts are with you all. We've only got 1 month to go, whānau, or just over a month, and we're going to be celebrating Matariki, which is so awesome. So, and that's an exciting time for us. But Tracy, on behalf of Dot and I and the whānau and the Wū whānau and all the Wū people who have come on tonight, thank you for this amazing, amazing kōrero. Thank you for all the mahi that you do, for all the wāhine and tāne who come into your life. So thank you so much.
Ngā mihi kia koe.
And I'm really naughty. I should have warned you, but would you like to close us for the evening?
Aye.
Oh,
Yep.
cool. Let's go. Everyone always throws me daggers at the end, but let's close. And Dot, you're gonna come on, eh? So Dot's gonna. She's looking at me like, no, I'm not, Toihana. But so just I'll pass this over to Tracy to close us off. Kia ora whānau.
Kia ora. Ko o te mataro, ko o te matanui, ko o te matanaro, ko o te puihi, ko o te puiho. Tira tangata, te kukunatanga, te waihanga ko te pūtara, te whainaro, ki ro ki a te hinenaro. Ko te mai whati atu, ko i o te roha, ko te pūtanga nā me miha tatui, ko te here a te mauri, ki tōna wairua, hei oronga mō te tangata, huie, huie. Tātou kuri e. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora whānau. Much love to you all. Ka kite.
Ka kite.